Recorded. Okay, perfect. So tonight's training should be fun. It's a topic that I think never gets old. It's always like a good refresher for me to talk about with you guys, but it's even, something that I constantly have to revisit in terms of my own personal habits. And so I thought it was pretty timely because as, I was kind of just like, out for the count for the last week, I was like, man, like there are some people who are depending on me to like text them or like check for them. And, I don't know that I've been vocal enough in the last year with some of my distributors on, the true skill set of entrepreneurship, so much so that people can survive on their own. I think that if we talk to some of my old heads, they definitely, are able to be out here, living their best lives with or without me. But I want to always continue to create a culture of self-sustaining leaders. I think that my sponsor, when I was talking to her a few weeks ago, the way that she kind of put it to me was she was just like, Alena, you are like a true fisherman, like you fish for people and you teach them how to fish. You provide them a ton of resources, but more than anything, I really pride myself on people being able to sustain their business without key man risk. And I like to say that because it's a term that we used to use when I worked at JP Morgan. But basically, if we were investing in a certain company or a certain fund, we always look for key man risk. Like what happens if Mark Pentecost, is unable to run the company? What happens to the young and free if Alena is no longer the face of it? And based on the level of risk that exists, that's tied to that person, that's how we value the company. And so from day one, it has been very important for me to make sure that there's no key man risk in anybody's business. And the way that we do that is by making sure that we are running our businesses as entrepreneurs and not as employees. Okay. So, the conversation for this industry specifically is a little different because it's a very, very unique industry. And so what I mean by that is this is not like your traditional small businesses, where you kind of have like the CEO and you have these roles and you kind of are just like, doing your own thing, running your company how you run it. Because with network marketing, there is still this element of it's not just you. Right. So we know that a lot of times our businesses are impacted by our team members, their level of success, their level of commitment. And so it's one of those things where you have to find that middle ground, or what we like to call that sweet spot between treating people like business owners and treating people like employees. And I feel like this is something that is super unique for this industry in particular, because 90% of the people that we're partnering with, or 90% of the people that are in this company, are part-time. So what that means is that the level of in which someone's working their business can vary from person to person based on the amount of time they have, whether they're full-time, part-time, how much money they're trying to make. And so, to assume that everyone is going to run their business exactly like you would just only be hurting you, because everyone is not. Everyone doesn't come in with that same level of commitment. And so as leaders in this business, it's important that we understand what that looks like. How do we, from day one, kind of create a space where people understand what entrepreneurship is. They understand that this is their business, but we do it in a way where, at least in the first 30 to 90 days, it's almost as if we are managing newbies. We are the boss, because most people are transitioning from an environment where they need to be told what to do. Okay. So I think that that's helpful to say, because it would almost be naive to say, oh, well, this is your business. Come in, run it like a business, run it like an entrepreneur. When most people don't have entrepreneurial skills. Most of you all on the line, even though you may have drive, you may be full of ambition, you may come to me and just straight up be like, Alena, I know nothing about running a business. I know the kind of things that you just happen to know because you've been doing this for 5 years. I had no clue about that. I have no clue about marketing. I have no clue about human resources, color personality, branding. I don't know any of that stuff. And that's that sweet spot of saying, okay, I am going to play the role of your coach. I'm going to basically play the role of, I brought you in. It's almost like you bringing someone into the land of entrepreneurship before, as long as they need you to, you're playing that role of like that coach where you're teaching them how to fish. Okay. So number one, for most of you all, that have never been in some type of capacity where you've had to kind of set your own goals, set your own pace, set your own schedule, that can tend to be the biggest challenge, okay? Because most of us are programmed to, even before we really get jobs, we're still being told what to do by our parents, our teachers, our church members, whatever. And so to be just like left to figure it out just kind of feels weird, right? But there's a huge element of being a self-starter that must take place in a business like this. Number one is because even though your sponsor, may give you tons of resources for the life of your business, the reality is that the super hand-holding coaching will not last forever. The way that we get paid in this business is not to handhold people for years. It's to handhold people for 30 to 90 days, teach them what they need to know so that within 30 to 90 days, they can be teaching someone else. That's why the compensation plan and the business model are so simple. They're 3 steps because they want it to be so duplicatable that you don't have to come in and be a rocket scientist to teach somebody else something, right? So knowing that, it's important that one of the biggest skills that you grasp early on is making sure that you're taking initiative. Okay. So entrepreneurs, okay, we're talking about 2 different things. I think that for employees, right, when you are at work, anybody that's doing extra is always going to probably be the first person to get a promotion, right? But for the most part, if they're not offering no promotion, they're not giving us better pay, we're not going to overextend ourselves to do more work unless we really are trying to grow with that company. However, with entrepreneurships, you always have to be doing more when nobody's watching, okay? So this was a big adjustment for me that I don't even think I realized in the beginning, but it was just it was the paralyzation of too much freedom. And a lot of times this happens significantly when people completely leave their jobs. Okay. So I know that I have a few girls on the line who, did It Works part-time for 2 or 3 years, eventually were able to quit their job. And then when they got all this free time, it was like, oh my God, like I literally thought that once I got free time, I was going to be able to do this, and this, but the days fly by, I don't get anything done. And for many people, studies have shown that it can take you 2 additional years post quitting your job to really figure out how to master the art of taking advantage of that freedom of time, because too much freedom paralyzes you. The way that you do this is by making sure that you set parameters around the way in which you are going to run your business. So that means that even though you have freedom of time, right? So if you're part-time, even though, nobody's looking, you still have to work as if someone is. So what I used to do in the beginning is I pretty much took my entire corporate experience and I overlaid that on top of my It Works experience. So what I mean by that is anytime I would bring something to my manager, whether it's a new project, a new idea, I would always have, a super dope presentation. I would always go above and beyond to really garner the support that I needed. And so in the beginning, that was something that really worked for me. I came into this business and it wasn't, just, okay, let me just play small, let me drag my feet a little bit. It was really, really like, let me take ownership. So I think that, one of the things that I want to make sure that you all are doing is making the decision that this is, going to be something for you that you're going to fully take ownership of. And then deciding, what does that actually look like day to day? So, the good thing is that, you can always have a session in the beginning, and really at any point you can come to me and be like, hey, this is my goal. Okay. I made the decision that I want to go, diamond within 90 days, that I want to make $5,000 per month, that I want to pay off $20,000, in student loan debt. This is the goal. Okay. This is the goal. And from there, it's the ownership of, okay, well, does my goal align with my reality? Okay. And sometimes this is where the actual pulse check or heart check or really getting in front of somebody that knows more than you can help you really decide if what you want makes sense for the life that you're trying to live. Okay. So let me give you an example of this. I was actually having a conversation with a double on our team the other day. And she was saying, Alena, it just seems like the people that I'm working with, they're working, they're doing what they need to do. They're talking to people, but they're not working at the level that they need to work to hit emerald, or, some of them are saying that they want to be diamond, but they're not working at the level, to be diamond. And my advice to her was, well, what level are they working at? And she was like, it just kind of feels like they work when I come checking for them. Oh, okay. So they're working like employees. They're not necessarily working like business ownership. And she was like, that's exactly correct. And I said, okay, so number one, the first thing that has to occur is that there has to be a conversation where you have to identify expectations on both sides. One of the biggest problems with this business is that people see a certain number, a certain rank, a certain lifestyle, but they don't truly know what that looks like. Like they don't truly know what that looks like to get there until you literally break it down to them. And then from there, people need to decide, does that lifestyle make sense for them to be able to achieve that, right? So let me get more specific with you guys. So, if someone, okay, so there was a girl that called me and she was like, this is actually one of my neighbors. And she was like, hey, me and my husband are looking to make some extra income. I know that you do, it works, but time is not really on our side. We don't have a lot of time. Does it take a lot of time to do this business? And so my answer to her was pretty much just like, it varies. As business owners, we get to decide what kind of time we want to put in. However, I will be able to better tell you if the kind of time that you have is sufficient enough to make the kind of money that you want. So what kind of money are you looking to make? And she said, oh, well, anywhere from $500 to $6,500 a month. And I was like, and how much time do you want to put in per week? And she was like, oh, no more than 2 hours a week. And I said, well, that's not realistic. That's not realistic in our business, because the way that this business works is that you cannot put a little bit of time here and there. You have to put significant amount of time to get it off the ground, right? So that's why, when I always talk about seasons, and that was something I was looking at, not to digress, I was looking at an article the other day about this topic, and it said that employees look at life as work-life balance, and entrepreneurs look at life as seasons. And I think that that's something that I've been preaching for over a year now, is seasons. And the reason why I had to start living my life in seasons is because that's how my business model is. Okay. And so, so I've said a lot. Let me go back a little bit. So number one, setting expectations, identifying, is the money that you want, what does that really take? And sometimes if you don't know what that takes, go to somebody who's done it. Go to your sponsor and say, which would be me in the case, assuming you're on the line, unless you're somehow got the passcode and you were uninvited. No, I'm just kidding. But you would come to me and say, hey, Alena, I want to make $2,000. I work 50 hours a week. I only got 2 hours to do this per week. Do you think it's feasible? And then based on what I think it will take to get there, we can determine, can you do that amount of work in 2 hours? If you can, then it absolutely is. Now, if you don't have the capacity to do all of the things that it takes to be a triple diamond at this season in your life, does that mean that you're not going to ever be able to be one? No, it just means that right now the goals that you set are unrealistic for the life that you live. And unless you're willing to change your life, give up all of your weekends, give up all of your evenings, start to read obsessively, start to study the industry, grow your skill set. Unless you're able to do all of those things, then it's not a realistic goal set. So number one is entrepreneurs have to be realistic in what it's going to take to achieve those things, and break them down to a level where you totally understand, am I able to achieve each of these things, right? So for me, my biggest goal when I first came in was 10K in 90 days, which basically was the diamond bonus that they had at the time. And so the way that I looked at it was, okay, based on how things are rolling, I need to go ruby in my first month, I need to go emerald in my second month, and I need to go diamond in my third month to get that. And I then broke that down into, okay, each month, these are the amount of people that I need to add, which essentially meant every month I need at least 5 new distributors on my team. And then collectively, everybody needs this. So based on that, I'm probably going to have to do this many wrap parties. I'm going to have this many opportunity calls. And looking at my schedule, do I have time to do that? Okay, that's actually how I end up transitioning out of the lip bar, because I looked at my life and I said, what is the priorities for me right now? The priority for me was to make additional income that I could then filter into my other businesses, invest into other businesses. But I knew that if I was still working lip bar full time, I would not be able to dedicate the time that I needed in this season of my life to get this business off the ground, to then create residual income to throw into other things that I had going on, which was my ultimate goal, right? So at that point, I had to make a decision. Will I be able to do both? No. If I keep doing both, neither one will grow, okay? So what's going to allow me to have the most impact is this over here. What's going to allow me to have the most leverage is this over here. And so now I have to basically get rid of every other thing. I have to make an entrepreneurial, managerial call, executive decision to say everything else that doesn't fall in my life in this window, in this 90-day period, has to be gone. It's completely nixed, because my level of focus has to be mono. That was something else that was in the article, was that a lot of times employees pride themselves on multitasking. Entrepreneurs pride themselves on monotasking, which means finding one thing to throw their passion and their execution into and watching that successfully get off the ground, instead of trying to do 50 million things at once and then nothing actually is really, really excellent, right? Because when you're running a business, it has to be at a level of excellence for you to actually get it to a place of sustainability. All right. So, I want to go back to the point that I was getting ready to get into, which I cannot remember. So give me 2 seconds. So I was talking about expectations, money. Dang. It was a third point that I wanted to talk about. God, I'm already starting to get this like pregnancy, right? Okay, so we'll come back to that. So hopefully it'll come back. Okay, so the other thing is setting up an environment that allows you to thrive. So this was something that was key for me, still is. For whatever reason, I cannot really excel or get creative thoughts or just get into my flow in pajamas. Like I just can't, like I can do everyday tasks, shoot out emails, post, send DMs. I can do all that stuff in pajamas. But if I'm coming up with a new marketing strategy, if I'm recording a video, if I'm getting ready to do something that is like big for my business, I got to go shower, get cute, and feel my best. All right. And then I have to put myself in an environment that allows me to work. So I don't necessarily have to leave my house to get stuff done, but I have to be sitting up at a desk. So I can't be in my bed. I have to be sitting at a desk. Sometimes I'll go to a coffee shop. Sometimes I'll go to a co-working space. So, you have to be able to identify environments that allow you to actually thrive. A lot of us are not taking the time to find spaces where we can get in our flow. And then we are basically running our businesses almost like this choppy thing where we do 20 minutes here, 20 minutes there, all from our phone, from our car, which is fine when it comes to just the everyday posting and stuff. But when it comes to actually mapping out and thoughtfully thinking about what our strategy is, we have to make sure that we're taking time at least once a month to identify, these are my goals. These are my strategies for the week. These are the calls that I need to make. These are the parties I need to set up. These are the emails that I need to shoot out. And then finding a home for all of those things on our calendar. All right. So environment is everything. Finding out how do you thrive. And that looks different for everyone. What space and what environment, what attire, what music, what coffee, whatever it is that gets you in your flow, you got to figure out what that is and then get there. And then the other layer of it is setting up like these checks and balances, right? So a lot of times that will naturally come in network marketing as part of your team, right? So it's hard to just like work in a silo when you got a whole chart of people that's coming to you with questions. So your team in some way is going to hold you accountable for what you're supposed to be doing for them, right? But that doesn't really have anything necessarily to do with your goals, right? So so that means that, like, you know, there's somebody who, if you said you're going to do a training call with them, or if you said you're going to do a 3-way call with them, or if you said like, okay, I need to do 5 3-way calls this week with my team members, 9 times out of 10, the people that you set up calls with are going to hold you accountable to that. But if there are things that you need to do personally for yourself, maybe you need to make 20 phone calls to grow your hundreds list. Maybe you need to go blitzing 2 times a week to grow your hundreds list. Maybe you need to throw a party twice a month to, you know, share your product. Nobody's going to look at you and be like, hey, Alena, did you do that party? Right? So if you know, like, there's some people that like literally you'll write down, this is what I need to do, and you'll stick to it. Like, amen. I'm so glad God created those people. I have not met those people for real. Maybe like 2 people in my lifetime, and some of them are on our team, and I think they're psycho. But for most people, we need somebody giving us some level of accountability to get all of our goals done. So it's essential, guys, that you have a level of accountability in your life for someone that is going to not necessarily come to you and ask you to produce receipts, which may work for some people. That's another thing, is that you have to understand who are the people that bring that force you to bring your best self, but in a natural way. So like, I have a set of friends in my life that I feel like truly care about me. Like, they're not judging me. They're not checking for me in the sense of what you get done, or where you doing, or how your money, like, people that are genuinely wanting to be a soundboard for me. And so those set of people, when I get around them, I feel like I can just throw off ideas. I feel like I can engage and talk about things that I'm proud of. I can talk about wins. I can talk about doubts and fears. And in that conversation, there can create some level of accountability. Because for me, I can't be in an accountability group where it's all about like, show me what you did today. For other person, and remind you, I'm a blue, okay? So I'm not a hardcore numbers person. Like, I'm never going to be like, oh, 5 customers today, 5 DTs today. Like, that's not going to get me moving. But there are some color personalities where receipt dropping and being able to tell somebody, this is what I did today, and somebody being like, yes, girl, kill it, you doing it. That's what you need. So you have to identify what are the level of accountability that you need that makes you thrive. If you don't know what that is, this would be a good time to go and revisit that color personality sheet, because in that sheet, it talks about the things that your color personality thrives off of in terms of recognition, letting people know what you've done. Maybe you don't like that type of environment. It's important to identify that so that you can get an accountability partner, an accountability circle that is set up in a way that merges with you. There are a lot of people that have accountability partners, and they shouldn't be accountability partners. You know, your personalities clash, they don't mix well, and it just, every time you feel like you got to check in with them, you start sweating because you're like, oh, I don't got nothing to tell her today. That's not a good accountability. You should be excited to me. Like, anytime I'm meeting with Melissa, like my friend, I mean, y'all probably heard me talk about her a million times. She's one of my just life accountability partners. And it's a very informal accountability because it's very natural and organic. But every time we are set to meet up, like, I'm so excited. Like, I save ideas just for that conversation. Like, I save topics just for that conversation because I'm so excited to get in that space with her and talk about it. But I've been in some groups where I'll be like, oh my God, like, take me out of this. Like, I can't live in a space like this, you know? So you got to find that person, you know, or that group that lets you, that not only like makes you want to level up from a natural standpoint, but they really like drive you in the capacity that's right for your personality. Now, when it came to It Works specifically, It Works is not, you know, one of those creativity driven business, you know, unfortunately for us blues. You can be very creative in this business, but at the end of the day, it's very cut and dry what it is. It's a very numbers based business. You talk to this many people, you're going to get this many people in return, right? So for me, I spent a lot of time, you know, in the creative space, but creativity and marketing and branding and stuff like that doesn't really make you money in this business. It will attract people in this business, but it doesn't help you close people. It doesn't help you duplicate, none of that, right? So for me, I needed to identify an accountability partner that, that compensated for my weaknesses, right? So that was another thing that I've always heard about entrepreneurs and employees is that, you know, employees sometimes, you know, even if you're in a job and you're in your performance review, you know, they'll say like, how could you improve your areas of weakness? You know, they spend a lot of time trying to improve your areas of weakness. Whereas in entrepreneurship, is really highly applauded where you know, when you spend more time in the areas that you're strongest, when you identify your strengths and you live there, right? So that's something that Ronnie taught me very early on in my network marketing career. She was like, don't spend time focusing on trying to become, you know, good at the things that you're terrible at. Go and find the people around you and the people on your team that are great at the things that you're not so great at, and find some type of way to build together so that they can do the things that you hate doing and you can do the things that they hate doing, and everybody can win, right? So, you know, kind of finding that within your team and finding that delegation, finding that balance and letting people work in their strengths are things that entrepreneurs do. You know, we look around and say, who are some people on our team that are great closers? Who are people on our team that are great at making flyers? Who are people on my team that are awesome at captions and newsletters? And how can we collaborate to really bring together X, Y, and Z? Another example of that isn't necessarily within my team that gave me a level of accountability that almost created like this work environment, but it wasn't a work environment, but it is, right? Because if this is still a business, you have to, like, these are the things that I took from my corporate space that I felt like made me work harder. Was, this is the thing, okay? And I wish I had this book, but I went to a business conference last year, and basically they said the way that people thrive nowadays, okay, and particularly millennials, is that not only do they need like personal attention, right? So everybody wants some level of like one-on-one coaching, but we also need to know that we're collectively a part of something greater, okay? So, you know, I've seen that on a personal level for me, right? So I love getting one-on-one coaching from my mentors. You know, I love talking one-on-one with my team members. What's working for you? What are you doing? But I also really, really thrive on team success. You know, that's why I was always so big on creating a culture for my team, because I know, okay, maybe I'm not having a great month individually, but I still got to go in and put in work because my team is winning right now. My team needs to show up. My team is doing numbers, right? So it's finding that healthy balance between setting your team up where they're all getting like some type of individual coaching, but they also know that they have a greater role in the entire team, right? So that's why it's so important to throw people into some type of community. But on a personal level, that's the type of environment that I set myself up for, right? So I would always go and find mentors in the business. You know, my mentor actually just transitioned to another company. But one of the reasons why I was so in love with Adrienne was that, you know, we had similar backgrounds, similar stories, similar personalities, similar styles in terms of how we communicated with people. And so I was able to, just like I did in corporate America, go and network, right? You know, I don't know why sometimes when we get into this entrepreneurial space, specifically network marketing, why we lose those skill sets that we have in our other capacities. You know, why do we stop the networking? Why do we stop scheduling the coffee dates? You know, why do we stop, you know, meeting people that are where we want to be? That was something that I brought over from the corporate space that I felt like really, you know, set me up for success. Was I remember one time I went to DC and literally shadowed my uplines for an entire day. You know, I didn't just like kill them with questions about it works, but I just literally wanted to see how they moved. I wanted to see their mannerisms. I wanted to see how they interacted with people during their blitz or during their regular conversations. And that was something that I set up, you know, so that was me putting myself in an environment to learn from the best in an individual lane, right? But then when I would go to corporate events, one of the things that I loved is I was able to go wide in terms of setting myself up in accountability groups, right? So groups that allow me made me accountable to other people beyond the people that just were reflected in my paycheck, right? So if you've been with me for a while, you've heard me talk about this group. But basically it was this group that I was a part of on my road to ambassador. And every single week we would get together and literally the topic would be what's working, what's working for your team. And I love this setup because it gave me accountability where, number one, you can't be a part of an accountability group without bringing something to the table, right? So every single week I had to bring my best and brightest ideas, which means that I had to really build relationships with my downline to see, who was really performing, who was getting the numbers in, and what they were doing. So by the time I got back to my accountability group, I could be like, this is what my runners are doing. This is what's working for me as a leader. This is what's working for us as a team. But what I loved about that call was that so many of the leaders that were on that chat with me were completely different color personalities and ran their businesses completely different. So I was able to get perspective into things that just I would never be on my radar. So an example of that was like Rachel Wiggum, for example. She was a part of that. She's my individual accountability partner to this day, but still on that wider scale as a part of that group. Rachel is really, really great at recognition. Like she loves giving out gifts. She did promotion parties every month, and for me, I never had a local team, so I never really thought about the huge piece that camaraderie and just relationship building and recognition really played in long-term sustainability for my team. But after we became aware of that, it was a game changer because, we did a few promotion parties here and there, but we really started understanding how important it was to, when we go to different cities, get people in the room. When I see people are doing well, picking up the phone, calling them, building relationships with people who are not necessarily just tied to me, because that's a huge piece of loyalty for my team. That's a huge driver for people to really want to work hard for the team. But it gives that level of one-on-one, but also that accountability to the greater culture, which I talked about earlier, right? So that's a mindset that, when you're coming in and if you're still thinking, okay, I just need somebody to tell me what to do. That's great. I feel like there's always going to be a ton of resources, but then the real money and the real execution in this business is when you start really learning what you're doing in your everyday job. Think when you look to your left and your right, what is the setup of my corporate space and how can I bring that over here? One of the things that I used to do when I first started was I had Sunday calls every single week, right? And I basically started doing that because when I worked at JP, every single Monday morning at 8 a.m., we had a check-in call. It was pretty much like everybody across the globe would come to the global head guy and be like, this is what's going on. This is what we're working on. This was working. This was not working. And so I wanted to literally take that business idea and bring it to my entrepreneurial venture. And it was huge. It was a game changer for me because it went from me, just preaching at people to literally people coming back and giving me reports, me telling them how they could, improve it, me recognizing people on the call, me shouting people out, me giving ideas on the call. But every single week, it was like a status meeting, and that's something that if you're still thinking like an employee, you wouldn't think to do. You would just show up for the meeting. But those of us that really want to own this business, we're going to take it to the next level and start bringing over habits from a corporate perspective and say, how can we infiltrate that into our business and run our business like a business and not a hobby? Another part of this that I think that we talk about a lot, but that we don't spend enough time on, particularly in this industry. Okay, so number one, let me say this. When I was first getting ready to graduate from FAM, I was obsessive over making sure that I knew all things financial services, investment banking, Wall Street. Was reading the Wall Street Journal every single day, had read every book that was on the book list, was watching every channel that covered stocks. I was on it, you know, because I knew that when I got into this space, in order for me to thrive, I needed to speak the lingo. I need to understand. I need to know what was the newest thing. So one of the habits that I brought over into It Works and into really anything that I do, right? So there are a few different projects that I've worked on in the last few years. And one of the first things that I do is I learn the lay of the land. Okay. This was something that I actually learned in the School of Business, was to learn the ropes to know and the ropes to skip. That's the name of a book that we had to read freshman year. But it's a great habit. And the lay of the land really means, let me truly understand, like, what am I getting myself into? What is the ultimate goal of this industry? How do people that excel in this industry typically work their businesses? So for me, that meant not only do I need to get familiar with It Works, but I need to get familiar with my industry. Okay, so that was me going above and beyond to read books on network marketing. I have a girl who was recently telling me about this podcast that's specifically for network marketers. Started listening to that, you know, and it just opened my eyes to a world that I didn't even know existed. It's like never being a pharmaceutical rep and going to pharmaceutical sales and learning all this stuff about the industry. And you're like, oh my God, like I didn't even know this stuff existed. Like I didn't even know this was like a thing, right? And so coming in, not only did it set expectations for me, but it helped me in a way where, from a mindset standpoint, I knew what I was dealing with. I knew, you know, the type of things that I was going to have to tackle when they happened to me. They didn't take me by surprise. But I also was able to identify the skill sets that I needed early on in the business. Okay. So, you know, a lot of employees, the employee mindset is going to be, you know, I'm going to sit around and just wait for somebody to tell me what to read, what to be, who I need to become. And that may not ever happen. Like if you don't land the right phone call, that may not ever happen. So instead, you can be the entrepreneur and go and seek the resources so that you can put yourself ahead of the curve. And then when you have specific things to your company or specific things to a phone call that you had or a webinar that you saw, you can then come to your sponsor or to your accountability partner and say, hey, you know, this is something that I noticed that some people are doing within our company. What are y'all thoughts on this? What is working specifically for our product? You know, how are we promoting keto coffee specifically? But when it comes to industry-wide, you have to own that piece of it. You have to own the skill sets that comes with the business ownership part of it. Okay, so the thing that I was going to talk about that I don't feel like we talk about enough, but I talk about it, but is relationships. Okay, relationships, people skills. Okay. This is something that I think that typically the only profession that I know for sure people really spend time on mastering the art and science of relationships is sales. And I know that we don't necessarily consider ourselves salesmen, but the relationship part of it is less about it. I'm not going to say less about, because it's very important to be able to, you know, close the deal, get prospects. But more than anything, I feel like the relationship part of it when it comes to team building is the missing piece that a lot of people struggle with in this business. It's learning how to transition from just trying to master self to actually coaching others. Okay, so what I mean by that is the first phase of your network marketing business is to literally come in and master the two things that we get paid for, which is getting customers and getting distributors. Okay. Once you have mastered that as as an individual, your next job is to build a team. Okay. So then the skill set from there is no longer, can I just get customers and distributors? Is can I show other people how to get customers and distributors? But then it's also, can I also coach other people on how to coach? Okay. Most of us cannot do that. Why? Because we don't even realize that that's part of our job. You know, we don't even realize, because in our mind, we're still being coached and we're still learning, which most of us are. But the way that our industry is set up is that many people can become leaders in under 30 days, right? So you have to learn how to not only become a coach fast, but you got to learn how to teach other people how to become coaches fast. And the thing is that most people will fail at this if they have no relationship experience. Okay. They are going to not necessarily fail at the business. Their business is going to move much slower because they do not know how to communicate with people. They don't know how to ignite flames in people. They don't know how to get people on one accord. All of those like relational skill sets, because they've never had to do it and they haven't invested the time in the actual skill set because maybe they didn't know that they needed it, right? So what happens is that over time, we have to learn from experience. I mean, if you stick around long enough, 2 or 3 years, you're going to learn how to deal with people. You're going to learn how to coach people. You're going to learn what to say, what not to say. And that's why you can see people on our team who came 3 years ago, or even if you look at me and see the way that I coached 5 years ago, is completely different. Because number one, I invested in myself in terms of learning how to coach, learning how to deal with people, learning and understanding relationships. But then some of it just comes with experience. Some of it can't just be read in a book. It has to actually be lived out, right? You have to then take what you learn, apply it, see how people react, and then adjust the structure every single year based on the people that you're working with, right? So I would say that taking the initiative, particularly in this industry, to learn how to understand and work with people is going to be essential. I know that a million times over, and I think I even have it in my onboarding one pager now, is the book How to Win Friends and Influence People or something like that by Dale Carnegie. It's still my number one favorite book for relationship building, because it just gives, and it's not even just for this industry, but it is so much for this industry, but it's really just in life, because once you can learn people for this particular industry, like, you're unstoppable. It makes it where you can close people easily. You can coach people easily. You can get people from quitting easily. Like, anything that you want, you can get it because you understand people. And I think that most of us are missing a large piece of that, because we haven't taken the time to level up in that particular area because maybe we just didn't know that that was a thing, So I'm telling you right now, okay, entrepreneurial homework number one is to invest in yourself in learning how to deal with people, understand people, coach people, etc. And if you need, some guidance on what that looks like for your team in particular, I'd be happy to do that. So the other thing that I also want to talk about is, let's talk a little bit about goal setting and what that really means. Okay, because it just feels like a lot of people have moving targets, which is not cool in entrepreneurship. Okay, that's why you have to have some type of environment that sets up a level of accountability for you, because you also want to put yourself in an uncomfortable position. You want to put yourself in a position where if you don't hit a goal, it's going to be uncomfortable for you. All right. And it's going to be days where you don't hit it and you will feel uncomfortable. And that's great, because that then ignites a whole new fire that, trust me, that fire takes you to the top. All right. Embarrassment, failure, setback, all that stuff takes you to the top. But if you don't set uncomfortable goals for yourself or in uncomfortable situations, it's just going to forever be like this moving target. That's something that I even struggle with post ambassador. It was kind of like, oh, I don't really have any goals anymore. Like, yeah, I can hit this on my 2.0, but it's only a couple of $1,000. Is it really worth it? And then at some point, it just became less about the goal and more about just like, Alena, hit it, like, Alena, do what you said you're going to do. Like, be a woman of your word. Like, if you said you're going to go this month, then get it done. If you say that you're going to do this, then get it done. Less because of what it means, but more because you said you were going to do it, And so I think that, a lot of us are not making sure that we're holding ourselves accountable for saying, I'm going to be impeccable with my word. If I said I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. Instead, we're just giving like these floating goals, which doesn't work in entrepreneurship. Why? Because nobody's going to come back and be like, girl, you did not hit that triple again. I can't believe. They're not going to do that. They're just going to be like, oh, what is she doing? Or they may not even be checking for you. Like, most people are not checking for you. Like, honestly, people are just trying to survive out here. They don't have time to hit you up on your on your phone and be like, girl, did you hit your goal this month? Nobody's going to do that. Okay. And you'll look up 5 years later, you're still sitting in the same position. You still got the same bills. Your income hasn't grown. And you're just like, what? You know, and sometimes there will be moments in time where that's absolutely necessary. You know, I think that I recently went through that probably about 6 months ago, which is why I even ended up just like ripping the Band-Aid off with my podcast. My podcast is so raggedy when it comes to production. Like, you know, it's so raggedy. Like, I mean, babies in the background, ambulances. But that was not the priority for me. The priority was to just be a woman of my word. And I said that I was going to move forward with what I had going on with the Reminder Remedy. And I was telling my line sisters this. I said, I was so proud of myself for literally just doing one episode, you know, because I had sat on the same episode for 3 years. You know, talk about a moving target. And once you get, it's like movement creates momentum in entrepreneurship. You know, it's like, soon as you start moving, soon as you start getting feedback, soon as you start seeing people on your team, you know, starting to work, or you see your culture and your morale starts to boost, it creates momentum. So it's like you have to set something, you know, in motion, you know, so that you can actually see progress for yourself, you know, and then set those little milestones and celebrate them yourself, by yourself. Like, that's a habit that has become so ritualistic for me. Like, literally, you know, there'll be things that people like will mean nothing to, it really doesn't mean anything in the grand scheme of things, other than the fact that I was just not a lazy bum today. And I got up and actually did something. And so now I'm going to go and celebrate it. How do I celebrate it? I celebrate by buying a book. Okay. Why? Because Dave Ramsey put me on a Barnes & Noble freeze because I buy too many books. But now that is a huge win for me. Anytime I do something in my business that calls me to actually put in work, put in a phone call, you know, like I just, when I first found out that I was pregnant, I just started taking massive action. I was like, oh my God, like I'm not about to spend 2 more years being fat and ugly with no new pictures and no new this and, you know, no new ideas. Like, I cannot sit around 2 more years and let these ideas that I have go to waste. So I just started pulling off the Band-Aid on all of this stuff. And I got all of this stuff done in 2 weeks. And I was so proud of myself. I was so proud of myself because it was like, there was nobody checking for me. And I tell my husband these ideas all the time. And at this point, he's just like, girl, I mean, you said this idea to me 3 years ago. You haven't done it, you know? And it's nothing like having the people that you know support you and believe you start looking at you like, you're not going to do what you say you're going to do. You never do it, you know, because you're steadily like making excuses for yourself. And so that became uncomfortable for me. You know, it became uncomfortable for me to have conversations with my husband and him just kind of being like, okay, that's what's up. Like, let's see if you do something, you know? And so that was enough fire for me and enough discomfort for me, because he is a level of accountability for me, because he sees me day in, day out. You know, he knows what my time looks like, you know, and I think that sometimes it's important to have people that are around you that can be so real with you. Like, I'll be like, oh my God, it just seems like I don't have enough time between this, and this. I just can't get anything done. And he was like, Alena, I just saw you scrolling your phone for like 45 minutes today. Like, what could you have been doing in that? And I'd be like, oh, okay. So you were checking on my phone. You was watching me. But it's real, you know, because it's like, okay, you're right. There were moments in my day, pockets in my day, where I could have ripped the Band-Aid off something else, you know, or I could have made progress, or I could have, you know, went and shot a new video or a new opportunity call, or, you know, checked in on some team members, or went and blitz, or whatever, you know. And so it's like being a woman of your word, in the sense of, when are you going to hit it? You know, like, when are you going to hit the goal? Like, what does that look like? And when are you going to take action on actually setting it up where it's real? You know, because a lot of us are setting up goals, but we're not setting up the back end work, which is something that I talked about back in January, you know, where, you know, when you're an entrepreneur, every level of execution is on you. You know, like, you don't have, like, you're not the manager or the person that gets to walk in and be like, hey, this is what needs to happen. And then all the little minions go and do their part and it comes together and it's boom. No, you are running every piece of that. And so if you don't take the time to put in the back end work, nothing ever comes together. Okay. So I don't know if anybody can access that old video, but in that video, I give an example of how, you know, when I was in college, anytime we had a party, you know, our profiles would be like, this party better be sold out. Like, there better not be a seat in the room, you know. And it was kind of like a thing where it was like, you know, which line throws the best parties? Like, oh, y'all not gonna be able to, you know, get the party more packed than it was always like this competitive thing, right? So the example that I gave was, you know, just because we were deltas didn't mean that people were just gonna show up to the party, you know. Like, just because you put a flyer out there like, oh, I'm hosting a rap party this weekend, and you know everybody, don't mean that people gonna show up. You know, just because you host a virtual party and you invited 50 people, don't mean that people gonna show up, okay? Just because you said you going Ruby this month doesn't mean that you're going Ruby unless you set the plan of action, okay? So what I talked about in that video was saying, what does that look like? So for us, it meant that it, like, literally 2 to 3 weeks before the party, 2 times a week, we would literally go knock on doors, okay? We would go knock on doors and pass out flyers. We would start in the freshman dorms, and then we would move to the college apartments. And it wasn't just a knock, okay? And this is just such a great example on so many levels for this. You know, it wasn't just, oh, let's put the Delta party flyer in the door. It was like, no, let's knock. And then when they answer the door, we might be at a door for 20 minutes, like entertaining some little freshman boys to like make them feel like the world, just so they would like be like, okay, yeah, we're coming. And then we would like get a confirmation to be like, okay, so we're going to pick you up on this set at 10:30 p.m. It's going to be a white Hyundai. Are y'all going to be there? Let me get y'all phone number so we can text you when we there. Okay. Real talk. Like, maybe that's why I'm so good at this business. Okay. Because literally that it was such an intrinsic thing. Like, it was like you had to you had to do so many layers of not just putting out the flyer. It was building the relationship. It was getting the confirmation. It was getting the phone number. And then it was showing up and picking them up and then making sure they had a good time once they got there, so that they would love the Deltas and they would come back to the next party. And, you know, we could always win Miss FAMU and we could do this and that. You know, it just led into all of these other things. And that's how this business works. You know, like, that's how this business works. It's not just being like, oh, we throwing a party. You know, it's, okay, what does the back end work look like? The back end work was twice a week. We were going out and giving out flyers. So in this business, if I'm saying I want to go Emerald in 60 days, okay, let me get with my coach and figure out what that means, number one. Okay, so that's the education piece of it. So either get with a book, get with your friend, you know, called Mr. Book or Mr. Podcast, or get with Alena and say, what does that even look like? Or come on, YouTube University. That's where I grew up. Okay, because I got a video right now that says how to go Emerald. All right, so you got all of these levels of resources. You go, and number one, you get the education piece of it. And then you figure out from a customized standpoint, what does that look like for you? All right, Alena, based on what I saw, it looks like I'm going to need to get 12 people, okay? And I'm on the phone with you today because I need 12 people on my team. I have 2 hours to work this business, okay? My son is a softball player. He got, you know, championship games 3 times a week, you know, so literally the only time that I really am going to be able to network with people is while I'm sitting at the game, on my lunch break at work, and then I have like 2 Saturdays this month, okay? So that's the job of a coach. That's where I come in and say, okay, if the goal is Emerald, okay, this is what's going to happen. Number one, more than likely, you're not going to be able to do this alone. Okay, so it's going to be essential that we go ahead and start you out recruiting some people out the gate, because that way they can start building the remainder of your team and you can just focus on customers. Customers are much easier to get with your list of 100s versus distributors, where it may take a little more work. But if you don't have the capacity, we got to find people that do have the capacity to do a little bit more. You know, because if you're saying you only got 2 hours a week, we need to go find your friends that got 5 hours a week. And collectively, they can do more work, but it'll still build up to the same thing. So everybody's road to Emerald is not going to look the same. Okay. So my point is, once we start educating on ourselves on what it takes, then it's the role of the coach to set the expectation and say, well, based on what you're telling me, it's not going to get done unless, you know, with you only being able to give me an hour a week, this Emerald not going to happen unless we take this route, which is this weekend, I need to be on 3-way calls all weekend. Okay, you got 2 free days, and I need you to pull out at least 50 names, and we need to be trying to get on the phone with at least 10 of these people and trying to close at least 5 of them. Can we do that? Can we work that plan together? Otherwise, it's probably not going to happen for you because you don't have time to recruit and train and this and that, right? So then from there, it's kind of, it's saying to yourself, what is my realistic goal? Okay, we're not even talking about stretch goals and all of that. We're talking about just like, what is my goal that I can be impeccable to my word and stick with? Okay, if I say I'm going to make this emerald happen no matter what, and I need to go ruby this month to get halfway there, what is going to be my goal that I'm going to hit, and what's going to be the back end plan? All right. So the back end plan, a lot of times will have to come from somebody that's more experienced. So if you're on the line and you've been doing this business 2 and 3 years, you already know like what a plan looks like. If you need 20 customers, collectively, y'all gonna probably need to talk to 200 people. What does that look like? Who having a party down here in Tampa? Who having a party in Atlanta? Who's doing the virtual party on Wednesday? Who's doing the virtual party on Friday? Making sure we have 3 opportunity calls 3 times a week. You know what I mean? Like, the things that seal the deal. And so it becomes working the plan for those 4 weeks in a month that you get and making sure that you hit them. So it never just happens, Like, you don't just show up and be like, oh, I'm a diamond, I'm a double. You never just show up to the party. Like, you have to create the party. You have to create the buzz. You have to create the calendar dates. You got to create the follow-up. You have to create all of this stuff. And the hardest part is that 9 times out of 10, if you're at the top of that party ring, nobody's going to be checking for you. Okay? Nobody's going to be checking for you to be like, hey, girl, especially depending on where you are on the charts. Like, you may be a team that's killing it, but if you're not really impacting nobody above you's chart, they definitely not going to be checking for you, right? So the only time somebody will check for you is if they know you have potential and, they want to work with you and they're overly extending themselves to help you get there. But if you pass 90 days, it's really, it would be really naive of you to assume that somebody every single week is going to be like, okay, did y'all lay out the plan? Did y'all do this? Did y'all do the opportunity calls? Really, it's going to be when you come to them and say, hey, Alena, this is what I'm working on. And that's what entrepreneurs do. Entrepreneurs go to other people that have been successful and they say, this is what I'm doing. What are your thoughts? Like, literally, I have a girl who's getting ready to start producing my podcast. And, I'm like, oh my God, it's the same thing in every industry. You got to understand the lay of the law, like the lay of the land. For the last 6 months, that's all I've been doing is researching like crazy. What does this look like? Oh, let me network amongst some people that I know have done this, have done something similar. What does this look like? Let me have those conversations and let me start setting some actual goals. One goal may just be this many listeners. One goal may be, let me get, a better flyer, like whatever it is, like set goals for yourself and do it in a way where you can be proud of it, even if nobody else checks for you, and then the other piece of it, and this is what I'm going to close out with, and I'm going to let y'all ask some questions, is the motivation piece of it. I was talking to Ashley Goggins the other day, just about, her struggle with just feeling like she has to constantly motivate other people. You know what I mean? Just no self-starters out there. Like, when you right there in front of people moving, they running, it's like a puppet. It's like as soon as you show up, everybody tap dance, and then as soon as you're gone, everybody chilling. Like that's exhausting for a leader. And so we're at a place in our business where things have shifted a little bit in terms of what keeps people motivated. Had you joined It Works prior to 2018, we've always had these get out of debt bonuses that, range from $20,000 to $150,000, which has always been a dangling carrot, but there's always something that, comes to bite you in the ass with a dangling carrot. It's kind of like you take it, and then you're like, whatever, like I got it, and I'll just deal with the repercussions on the back end. And many of us, that have been around long enough, dealt with the repercussions of, a lot of team members getting dangling carrots, and then the way that the compensation plan, you know, fine print is set up is if you're not maintaining what it takes to keep that carrot, they're going to snatch that bad boy back. Okay. And, you know, we have found that in the past, anytime people get their carrot snatched, unless they are really vested in this team and really self-motivated, they're pretty much going to check out. You know, they're embarrassed, their feelings are hurt, the morale is down, they feel like they don't want to start over, you know. So we dealt with a lot of people almost going on like this emotional high and then it just dropping like that, you know, like really fast. So it works, you know, came back and they've changed the compensation plan a little bit where, you know, it's not so heavy in the front of like these dangling carrots, but now it's like, you know, you have the opportunity to still get this compensation plan that's been the same, you know, over time, but it really more so recognizes people that are in it for the long run, right? It's the people that are self-motivated beyond the 30 to 60 days, okay? On average in this industry, most people will leave this business after the first 30 days, okay? 90% of people never make it past 90 days in this industry. So it's very interesting that It Works has set up a compensation plan where you don't even really unlock the potential to make money until 90 days, which is where most people can hit the diamond rank if they're working because they unlock CAD bonuses. So what they're doing now is they've created an environment where it's like they're almost trying to weed out the people that are only here to be told what to do. The quick employees, the quick hitters, the in and outers, they are really heavily rewarding the people who stick around and build heavy residual income. And that piece of it is hard for a leader because most people are only motivated by money, okay, in the beginning. And that's exactly how I was, which I think, who knows if I would have still been here if there wasn't, you know, some type of incentive. Because for me, I used to have my sponsors log in, and she didn't know it. She probably know it now, but I used to go into her easily every month, like, what this girl made? Let me see what she made, so that I could see like what would be next. But she was like one step ahead of me. And I remember the month she went double, her check was like $5,000. And I was like, oh my God, like I got to stick around one more month. Like that's going to be my game changer. And so I still had like that, almost like that motivation. I know like even for Antoinette, I don't know if she's on the line, my cousin, I gave her all my checks from my first year, you know, and so every month she would be able to compare her volume and her numbers, you know, to really give herself some type of goal to hit and to kind of gauge, you know. And I think sometimes those things are helpful as well. But, you know, for me in the beginning, it felt like I worked the hardest for pennies, for peanuts, you know. And I think that right now, that's what a lot of people experience, you know, is, okay, I'm killing myself trying to get the diamond. I'm killing myself trying to get the emerald. And then you open up the check and it's like, oh, $450. You were like, what? That's not even the average, you know, or $250 or $86. And you just felt like, my goodness, I killed myself. But for me, I felt like I had put myself in a position where I expected it, you know. Like I remember reading something in one of those books about the industry that said you will work the hardest in the beginning for absolutely nothing. And then you will wake up one day and for the same amount of work or less, you will be getting paid a whole bunch more. And that's exactly how it was in my career. It literally felt like my first year and a half, I was like, oh my God, like I'm like running the uphill battle. And then at some point it was like autopilot for real, you know? And it was my initiative to understand the industry, understand that this thing works in seasons, understand that I can't do a little bit here and there specifically to this industry. I got to have a huge 90-day push at least once or twice a year. It was understanding, you know, the role that people played in my business. That was a big learning curve for me, you know, from me being an employee where I just had to worry about self. Like I didn't care about whatever everybody else was getting. What is my bonus going to be? What is my performance review going to be? You know, so that was a big shift for me mentally, was like, oh, I have to actually make sure that people are also succeeding in life and are great and they feel great and they're motivated and they feel a part of something. Like that was the other piece. And that's where I feel like the money really expands, because that's the really, like, that's the tough job. Like the tough job is, you know, putting people before yourself. And that, we say that all the time, but we don't really recognize how hard that is. You know, like we don't really recognize how much mental work it takes to understand people's personalities, especially the ones that you don't like. You know, like there are people, and I'll be like, girl, you have a bad attitude. You are super pessimistic. You are super negative. And everything in me just wants to protect my space, you know? But then I realized that God assigned them to me because there's something about my personality that he felt like could smooth them out and coach them to be the person that they needed to become to be successful in this business. And so I have to lead with that. You know, and I have to lean to my accountability partners, to my other leaders, the people around me, to say, you know, this is the situation that I'm dealing with. How can I be a better coach for this person? You know, how can I better lead my team? How can I create more incentives? How can I create an environment? That was one of the reasons why I rolled out, you know, our retreats every year, because I realized how important it was for my leaders who kill themselves. For number one, for me to recognize, I see you killing yourself out here in these streets. And I know none of y'all are making over 10K. So y'all not even at a point where y'all, you know, are getting paid to kill yourself, but yet you're still silently killing yourself because you see and believe in the greater good. And number one, I recognize that. But number two, I want to be able to refresh and refuel you. So being able to come in, you know, and look at my corporate space again and seeing how they did that for their leaders, you know, how they recognize their leaders and pour it back into their leaders. I was like, I want to provide the same type of environment for my team so that the people can know that I recognize what they're doing and I don't take what we do as our job lightly, you know, and I'm willing to spend all of this, you know, money that I could just keep for myself, but I want to invest it back into my business. You know, so that's the last piece, you know, it's reinvesting. You know, a lot of us come in thinking like, oh, you know, let me just save this, let me pay off this credit card. But a portion of what we make needs to constantly be poured back into our business, whether it's more product for ourselves, you know, whether it's, you know, getting a hotel room to host the One Team, One Mission, you know, whether it's some people on our team that do smaller retreats for their team, whether it's buying small gifts for promotions, like reinvesting into the culture of your team or to the growth or expansion of you as an individual. Maybe you reinvest it into a coaching session. I know Tony Robbins got some sessions out there for $300. Maybe go get coached by the best. Treat yourself. You know, maybe you go to, they got women empowerment conferences every weekend in every city. Go to something like that. You know, it's so important that we take this business and we own it. You know, like we can't just wait for somebody to tell us what to do with it. We make it our own. We make it as unique as we want it to be. We run it how we want to run it. But the more that we can actually like physically, spiritually, emotionally pour into it, the more it will grow, you know, and that's the mindset that we have to have around it, that I'm going to pour so much of this into it because I know it will grow, but it's also who will it make me become in the end? You know, in the midst of me growing this business and going through hell and back to become who I want to become, to deal with these people, to learn the skill set, who am I going to become? I remember I was having a conversation with this guy one time, and he was telling me like, oh, you know, I went to med school for 3 years. And then after 3 years, you know, I just, you know, was like, it's not for me. I was only here for my dad. I really want to be a lawyer. So I just dropped it at 3 years and went to law school. And I just remember being like, what? Like, what would possess you to do that? And he was like, honestly, Alena, you know, one of the things that my father used to always tell me is, you know, beyond just, you know, the actual degree or the end goal is, you know, how is the mind transformed in the process? So just because I didn't necessarily get a med degree, during those 3 years, there were some things that I learned, some people that I met, some things that I learned about myself in low moments and high moments that completely transitioned or transformed who I am. So regardless of I got a degree or not, the experience itself transformed my mind, you know? And so I feel like even if None of y'all on this call ever become ambassadors. Don't even have the goal to become that or Black Diamond. You could be in this business for 6 months, and the things that you learn about yourself through the experiences that you have with people, in business, marketing, personal development, the books that you pick up and read, I guarantee you that they are going to transform you so much. And that's what ends up making the role of an entrepreneur so amazing. It makes it where you don't have to limit yourself in a box of a capacity of what's in line with your job description. It gives you the freedom to make it become and make you become whoever it is that you want to be. And in doing so, you become this beautiful version of yourself, good, bad, and ugly. But the beautiful part of it is that you're completely transformed based on your experiences, because you didn't create limits on yourself, because it was something that you could call your own. And so that's what I want y'all to focus on. Like, I want you to focus on removing how you think things should be done, how you're currently working, and look at your business as an opportunity to live limitless in a capacity that's going to stretch you, in a capacity that's going to force you to become, the person that you always wanted to become, but you had no real outlet to do that. Maybe you can't do it at work. Maybe you can't do it at church. Maybe you can't do it at home. But in your business, you can try all these new things. You can build all these new relationships. You can travel to all these new cities. And next thing you know, you wake up and you're like, you found so much freedom in the transformation itself that you're like, oh, actually now I'm getting paid too. Wonderful. But everything that led up to it was so worth it, because I would have never became this person had I not been given something in life that I can just put my all into and like call it my own. So let's open up the line for any questions that you guys have around this topic.
Alena?
Yes.
Hey, it's Tracy.
Hey, Tracy.
Hey, girl. So my question was, you said that, first of all, just identifying kind of where you want to be, and then you can help coach in regards to the time that you have available to contribute or dedicate to it, and then what it'll take to make it happen. Mm-hmm. So prior to setting up that call with you, what, I guess my question is, what exactly do you want us to come prepared to, so we're using the best use of our time?
The preparation is really just pretty much like saying, Alena, ideally this is what I want. Like I want my It business to be bringing me in $2,000 a month. Okay, so we know that the $2,000 level, that's a diamond check, right? So, and this is the time frame in which I want to have it done, right? So kind of let's see what that goal is, what your time frame of it is, and then what we'll talk through is really what's currently happening in your life. Like, maybe you working 18-hour days, or maybe you're working 5-hour days, or maybe you got the baby 12 hours a day, or whatever. It's going to really just be kind of looking through your schedule and taking what that diamond chart build out looks like and finding a home for all of those things, right? So kind of creating like a routine almost. Like I find that's something that a lot of us need is, okay, like what are just like the daily routines that I need? But the daily routine can change person to person because of the limited amount of time that we have, whether we're working in online or offline. So it's really just kind of setting the goal, setting the money amount, and then kind of mapping out what your current life looks like.
Okay. And I guess one more thing to add to that, do you have, because I know you'll send out availabilities from a calendar standpoint, can you send me what you have available, or is there somewhere I can go to kind of see what you have available for us to put something on the calendar?
Yeah, so my Calendly link is up to date, which I believe is just like / Alena Conley.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
sounds
you
good.
Schedule where it says like one-on-one.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome. Other questions, comments? All right, awesome. So hopefully I'll be hearing from some of you guys. If you have any questions, text me, call me. This replay will be available on my YouTube probably tomorrow. So thanks for joining, guys. We actually will be counseling next Thursday, and so we'll probably change all those days going forward. I think maybe I gotta look at my calendar, but I know next week we're gonna cancel because of month end, and then we'll pick up the following Thursday. So the next time we'll do this will be June 7th at 8:30. All right. So thanks for joining, guys. Good night.